Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're going to be jumping into another session of Epic 7. Now today, got another account overview for you guys. I know we just ended the previous RTA season about a week or so ago, and now the anniversary update is upon us. So what better time to share my builds than now? So those of you who are snagging new units, maybe using your 5-star selectors, or maybe even looking at artifacts, maybe you're gonna kind of get an idea of what I use them for. So anyway, let's jump into this, starting off with Abigail. So Abigail is here. She's on a very bruisery tanky build. She's changed from the last time I used her, or I showed her off here. She decreased in speed, right? So she's about 200 speed now. Could probably even go lower if you really wanted to, but I decided to pack in a bunch of bulk. She does a bit of damage. I didn't really put a whole ton on her, honestly, but yeah, her main role is to support. She's kind of a sub DPS. Some people build her like 300, 350 crit damage, which is quite insane, and definitely something that you can do. If you're going down that route, I'm using a crit chance necklace, by the way. You probably just need a crit damage necklace, and then crit chance in your other stats. You can probably drop her defense a little bit, but overall, not too bad. I'm running her on Victorious Flag because it decreases damage that she takes while increasing the damage that she does by a little bit. We also have her EE here, which decreases defense of the enemy for 2 turns, which is again kind of nice for defense breaking your tankier opponents, right? So yeah, anyway, these are all of her gears right here. Feel free to pause the video at any point to take a look more closely at the substats. This is my Ed. I love him really fast. He's almost 240 speed. He's on speed set and pen set. Didn't get to use him a lot this season, but he was actually coming in handy quite a bit near the end of the season, where everyone's kind of going super cleave mode and opening with a lot of debuffers. He was actually quite nice. I use him on Golden Rose, one of my 2 Golden Roses here, and he does very well on this. You can still run him on Sigurd if you don't have Golden Rose, because his attack scaling is actually not that bad. But yeah, overall, Ed, pretty solid. Next up is Hwayoung. I did try to use her near the start of the season, but she really just kind of tapered off and fell off, and now I don't know if she's even going to be that usable with Empyrean Ilynav running around. Hwayoung really does need a bit more help. I have her on speed set and torrent set, and she still barely kills the units I really want her to kill. She kills comfortably, like the kind of Soul Weavers, like 16k to 20k HP. Anything more than 20k is kind of a wash though. Really difficult to deal any damage with her. So yeah, don't really use her right now, but she is on Ubirus' Tooth, which helps out with her damage a little bit on her S1. Next up, the queen of the RTA season, and the previous one was Ravi. So Ravi here is on a counter pen set build. I like her quite tanky, 26k health, almost 1500 defense. You could run her on a bit more HP, right? So I know some people do run her on more attack as well, near 3k attack, and they run her on Victorious Flag, maybe decrease the bulk a little bit on defense and run Victorious Flag. I prefer her on Sigurd Scythe. You have seen my Ravi solo so many units, and I honestly still think Sigurd Scythe is her best artifact. Victorious Flag, really Ravi's S1 is not enough to self-sustain her through these types of situations. I still like Sigurd overall, right? They're going to be focusing your Ravi down quite a bit with hard-hitting skills, so she'll be in Sigurd range pretty often. I have her on this EE here, which increases the damage of her S1 by an additional 10%, which is kind of nice because that's what you're mainly using. Your S3 really comes up sporadically throughout a fight, and in most cases, if you're low on health, you want to S1 anyway to get her innate S1 healing and Sigurd healing at the same time. Alright, next up we have Shalltear. She is on a speed pen build. I actually used her quite a few times this season. She was not too bad overall. Pretty solid stats, right? 4k attack, 300 crit damage, 250 speed. Pretty good overall. She's on speed and pen set. Honestly, if you want to, you can probably run her on something like a torrent set. Probably better now that Empyrean Ilynav is around, because the penetration set won't be as useful, right? With Ilynav on the opponent's side. Running her on Pipette Lance, that's her own artifact, so that you can heal up 15% of the damage that's dealt, which is pretty decent. Also increases her damage dealt by 15%. It's nice because there's no condition to it, unlike with Sigurd or with Golden Rose, so she can keep staying above that 50% health threshold to continue, you know, getting that attack buff at the start of her turn. Next up, we have Fire Cecilia. Now, this is a unit that she can be used in PvP. You've actually seen me use her in the preseason. So these are her stats. She's kind of a bruisery build, mostly for PvE purposes. This is not a PvP build, but for some PvE units that can be used in PvP, I do have them here, so I'll show them off. Why not? She's on Rise of a Monarch. She does what FCC kind of does. I just made my Fire Cecilia into a better Fallen Cecilia, pretty much. But yeah, not too terrible here, with some extra bulk for the team. And I have her EE here, which gives decreased speed on 2 turns with her S2. So it gives her a second debuff along with her attack down, which is not bad. She's pretty good into Tywin, by the way, but you need her a bit faster than this. Usually 250 speed's good into Tywins. Alright, next up we have Fire Charlotte. Unfortunately, guys, Fire Charlotte is just not as good as Fire Ravi is. She does have AoE, she does guarantee crits, but she does just a little too... She's just a little too weak on the damage output aspect of things, even though I'm running her on a really strong artifact here, Broken Will of the Priest, which gives you extra hit chance, which is nice, but also when you attack, you penetrate defense by up to, for me, it's like 14% already, and she still struggles to kill, which is kind of sad. I do have her on the EE here, which after being attacked increases combat readiness by 10%, probably the best one that she has here for turn cycling, because that's what she struggles with, right? You see she's quite slow, but you need her slow because you need her bulky, and she needs damage, even without the crit chance requirement. She just kind of lackluster. Alright, moving on here, we have Jenua. Jenua, I tweaked his build actually. Look at that. Beautiful 4,000 attack, 350 crit damage on the dot, and 200 speed. This guy is an absolute menace. I use him all the time in Arena. In RTA, you know, I don't really use Jenua. I don't tend to chase the meta units all that often. I'm kind of, you know, confined to my own team, relegated to my shenanigans. But yeah, Jenua is a very, very solid unit. Unfortunately, not available in the 5-star selector this time around, but hopefully when he reruns that you guys can snag him up. Next up, we have Kayron. Kayron I didn't really use this season, unfortunately, but he is on a counter-resist build, almost 200 effect resistance, which is crazy, on some pretty decent damage, right? You just kind of have him sit there and he just keeps countering. The issue with Kayron right now is there's so many units that ignore res and strip, and unbuffable is a very common debuff right now too, so he can definitely get screwed over by things like DDR on your opponent's side, right? Double-edged crescent here gives him extra chance to evade, but also gives him additional chances to counterattack, which is not too shabby. His EE here is extra damage on his S1 because he's on a counter build, so when they attack him, he's going to slap him back pretty hard. Moving on here, we have Beehoo. Beehoo, I kind of want to tweak his build a bit. Actually, I want to increase his attack, decrease his speed, ideally. But this is what he's currently on right now. 270-something speed is not terrible. I don't find myself using him all that often right now, just because Earth Celine's around, and Earth Celine is really annoying into units like Beehoo because he relies on that non-attack skill quite a bit. He's on Seal of Capture, which is a really good artifact for him to apply extra burns. He detonates when he S1s anyway, so this is just extra damage for him. And his passive here is currently on the attack and defense increase by 5%. I'm going to switch it over to the burn on the S3, because when I do that, he can burn on S3, turn cycle around S1, and inflict 2 extra burns, and he can probably one-shot ML Landies, especially if I up his attack and decrease his speed. So that's what I'm going to be going for soon. Next up, we have Nahkwol. Yeah, that's right. Mine has a little bit of effectiveness, a little bit of resistance. Just kind of threw some spare gear on her, honestly, because I've been pre-banning her quite a bit. So because I've been doing that, there's no reason for me to personally have mine built super nice. Ignore that piece, I know. There's no reason for me to build her super nice, because, yeah, I don't get to use her in RTA because I pre-ban her anyway. Guiding Light is here just to make sure that she stays stealth. Very strong unit overall, right? Super annoying, and I should probably be using her more, honestly. Right, next up we have Summertime Iseria. I don't really think I drafted her, maybe like once or twice near the beginning of the season, but her build hasn't changed in years. I just am not that type of aggressive cleave player, so I haven't really tweaked her build. Almost 200 effectiveness. You know what, I did draft her near the end of the season, but my opponents kept banning her because I was using her into BBK to try to stun her, right? Because BBK's effect resistance is pretty high, so having a few units with super high effectiveness is pretty nice. her artifact is here to give bombs on her S1, right? So you soul burn S1, put bombs, good stuff, and then you detonate with the S3. Alright, next up, Festive Eda. I really need to start using her more often, but she is super, super nice. Got her tanky, 250 speed, 150 effectiveness. Honestly, I'm thinking of making her a bit faster, and I probably could. I mean, look at this piece right here, right? Could probably make her a bit faster. 260, maybe 270, because look at these pieces. They're not that fast. 12 speed, 11 speed, 12 speed, right? So if I can make her a bit faster while keeping some bulk up on her, I think it'll be ideal. I think we can get away with a lot more shenanigans with her in our TA. Moving on, we got Fire Meru. So again, not built for PvP, this is a PvE build, but because she is fully built and decked out, I am going to show her off to you guys, just in case you're building her, especially newer players, right? If you are using Meru, she's very good in PvE content. You will have kind of an idea of what to aim for later for endgame, but mine's a counter build, a bit of speed, quite a bit of damage, not really much HP, but because of her own artifact Magic for Friends, she does get to revive, which is kind of nice, and it decreases damage suffered by crits by 30%, so she's pretty solid. Alright, next up we have Politis. Politis, I really do want to switch her back to a degen build. By degen build, by the way, if you guys don't know, it just means a counter tanky build here. So we're currently running speed and crit. This is a pretty decent damage build, honestly, for someone who doesn't cleave or go aggro. But again, I just really don't utilize her enough on this build then that I think I should switch her over so I can utilize her more as an anti-cleave unit. She's currently on book, which is par for the course for any mage, especially an offensive mage here that has a pretty good soul burn for extra turns. Next up, we have Researcher Carrot. Her build hasn't changed in a while. I really do love Carrot here. She is pretty decent into things like, it's a very budget option and kind of a gimmicky option into Navy Captain Landy, but you can use her in things like Guild Wars in a more controlled environment. I have her on Edega Scepter, which is great for decreasing cooldowns. You can get her S3 up, keep using S3, get those burns going. She's not bad. Last but not least here, oh sorry, not last but there's one more fire unit, Roy Mustang. So I've really been trying to draft him throughout the season, but people keep banning him for good reason. He's a really strong unit, can potentially solo teams. He has a ton of damage on him, 4,300 attack, 300 crit damage, and almost 200 speed. He's on Lifesteal and Torrent. He's gonna fall off a little bit more because Empyrean Ilynav prevents defense penetration, right, by a ton. So his S3 actually penetrates defense. So yeah, hopefully you can use Ilynav with him. That'd be kind of cool. Next up, we have Chatty for his artifact here. He has this because it's actually really nice. Roy can't take more than half his health as damage with a single hit. So when he hits under 50% health, he gets an extra barrier, and that barrier adds to his HP count, right? It adds with his passive. So this makes him really difficult to kill, especially if you have an Aureus user on your team. Next up we have Shuna, the last fire unit here. I have not been using Shuna. It's quite sad. I wish I could, but she's a little bit subpar. I like her for her sleep, and I like her design a lot too, but yeah, she's just kind of not that great. In a lot of situations, I'd probably prefer to go DJB over her. And the main reason is just because she's very squishy here, and I'd need to probably lower her stats a little bit and increase her speed, but by then she's going to be so squishy that it's going to be hard to do anything with. EE is on Sleep. Increase that chance to 100%, which is nice. I have her on Eternus. You can run her on Soul Constellation and stuff, but my Soul Constellations are on more commonly used units, so Eternus is a good budget option for her here. Next up, for the ice unit, starting off with Choux. Choux is on 25k health, pretty nice. She's on Golden Rose as her artifact, counter and pen set. Use her quite a bit into fire teams. She crushes things like Fire Ravi very easily, and she's actually really good against lower damage teams, especially AoE teams. So Golden Rose here for the healing, for the extra damage, and we have her on her EE, which gives speed, and again, a crit will give you a 40% chance to do your S2 and whoosh your opponent, which is nice. A lot of people are running her on Prayer of Solitude, Lethe's artifact, and that is a really good artifact to be using on her. I only have one copy. I might be switching that over to Alencia, so we'll see when the update for Alencia drops. Next up, we have Rem. I've been trying to use Rem quite a bit near the end of the season. I love this build. Unfortunately, she's not a very viable unit right now, so been using her for fun though. She's a great fun unit, and I've been enjoying my time. So yeah, this is what she's currently on. A counter and immunity. We got a plus 15 Sigurd Scythe on her. Wish I had more copies. Thankfully, artifact selectors are here to help. And then next up we have ae-Karina. ae-Karina, I switched her, like, kind of build up a little bit. She is actually 200 speed. She's much faster now. I know some people build her, like, you know, 230, 240 speed. It's actually kind of crazy. Might try that. I don't know. But currently, she's doing okay. Speed set and then broken set. I can't afford to do counter. I don't have the right pieces for her, but she's on Rocket Punch Gauntlet, and this thing deals quite a bit of damage. It's very nice. The speed is just to help her turn cycle quite a bit against her opponent. It helps her helps her a lot. And then the effect resistance I dropped from 150 to 100. Most units don't need more than 100 resistance nowadays, unless you're going for like a ML Choux or something like that with like 200 resist, BBK maybe sometimes 200 resist or higher. So rare exception, right? Next up we have Brieg. Brieg is the king of PvE. If Tamarin's the queen, Brieg's the king. And we have counter set on him with pen set. So he's overall a very solid unit. If you guys are a newer player and you're getting your first Brieg, you don't have to aim for these stats. These are, you know, kind of end game stats, right? But counter and pen set is what I'm using. You can use counter set and crit set. You can use counter set and HP sets. There's a lot of things that he can be using here. Use what you got. I currently have him on mature sunglasses, mainly because I'd sometimes use him in PvP. But if you're using him in PvE, he doesn't need this either. You can do any damage artifact for knights. You can just do mitigation if you'd like. There's quite a few options out there. Alright, moving on from Brieg, we got Krau. Did switch up his build a little bit, 28k HP. He has 1.8k defense. And he is on speed set now, no longer on revenge. 100 resistance on the dot. And he's pretty bulky, but unfortunately he does need a buff. He does need some help to be more viable. He's currently on Aureus, and his EE gives speed, and he has, I have the increased chance to provoke on his S1. That's just to make him more consistent as a support knight, because he's a really good team player for provoking, pushing back, defense buffing, and all that stuff. He's just overshadowed by so many other options nowadays, and because he's HP scaling, injury does a number on him. Alright, next up, Summer Break Charlotte. I have her on Unity and Lifesteal. It is a tankier build, no speed. I rely on her solely to dual attack for her damage, and damage she has, right? Almost 3.2k attack and 300 crit damage. We have her on Portrait of the Saviors because typically you're going to be hitting with her pretty hard early on, and you can finish off with your S3, right? It's not terrible. Haven't used her in a while, mostly because it's easy to punish dual attacks right now. There's a lot of units that came out to counter things like Navy Captain Landy, for example, the extra attacks and stuff, that also work against Summer Break Charlotte. So she is a bit inconsistent, but the good thing is that her S1 actually can't be countered when you use that AoE hit, right? You can also soul burn to get that AoE hit, even if you don't have the enhanced dual attack buff. Next up, we have Ice Tywin. I wish he was good. I tried him, but really he just needs to be able to, anytime your backline unit is asleep or stunned, right? That he can cleanse it. Even things like bombs and such, right? He just needs to be able to cleanse it as long as the person's asleep and stunned. Right now, that backline unit needs to be hit while slept or stunned in order for Tywin to cleanse. And it's too conditional, it just doesn't work. If you were to build him, if you were to get that update, Aureus is great on him, he's a great support knight, and increasing combat readiness of the ally in the back row by 10% is also solid. You could run him on counter build to maximize this EE use, but yeah, that's currently my build on Tywin. Again, don't really see a use for him right now. Elvira, oh boy, talk about floodgates. So currently just under 250 speed, just shy of that, but 270 resistance. I know some people build a little bit lower, some people build like 220 resist, right? And then they use an artifact to increase the rest of their resistance. So for example, Host of the Banquet gives you 30% effect resistance at plus 15, pretty decent. You don't care about this extra damage dealt, honestly. But yeah, that 30% extra resist brings me to 300. Some people just bring their Elviras up to 250. I prefer mine never to get stripped by any unit like DDR and stuff when they have about 200 effectiveness. So that's why I went for 300. I think it's a good threshold. She's really good though against fighting spirit units. Alright, next up, Byblis. She gets banned a lot. I have her kind of a little weaker gear than she used to have, but that's because she does get banned so much. I usually just pick her, my opponents just ban her, and then we just never get to see her do anything. But speed and effectiveness, pretty good on her. We have old gardening shears as well for the extra potential chance to debuff the opponent. And that's about it. She just sits there. If your opponent counters, she counters, and then she strips all their buffs and puts defense break on. Really easy for you to kill afterwards, though. Byblis is a great unit. Next up, we have Flan. This is a unit I've been using sometimes in like Guild Wars and such, just for fun. 270 speed, just got a bunch of spare gear on her, nothing fancy. I just wanted her built because she's one of my favorite units in the game. 170 effectiveness. This is not a great build, by the way. Don't copy what I'm doing right now. Unseen Observer gives you extra combat readiness when you use non-attack skills, and you get 10 souls, which is nice because when you soulburn Flan and you push up somebody, right? They get that 10 souls to build off of, and then you can potentially, on certain DPS units, you can use 10 souls to soulburn for increased damage, which is kind of nice. She is on her EE that increases the combat readiness by an extra 10% when using her Data Monopoly skill, which is not bad. Next up, Riza Hawkeye. You guys have been wanting me to actually use her in RTA, which is really funny. She's currently on Guiding Light, and she's on Speed and Pen Set. She protects the frontline unit, typically, and she does do quite a bit of damage, actually. 240 speed is pretty good on her right now. I am a little bit overcapped on crit, so I should kind of tweak around my build a little. But yeah, I currently like her as she is. Next up, Seaside Bellona. I've been trying to use her a little bit against fire units in the meta. The issue with Seaside Bellona is that she's slow and she's very predictable, right? She has focus. It's really easy to counter focus units with Solitaria, with Emma Politis, for example. So Seaside Bellona struggles a little bit. You can still definitely get away with her, though. Some people are running Destruction Set on her just to slap opponents with that S2 and kill them right away. I'm going for more of a bruisery lifesteal build, and I do have her on the Dispel debuff with her S2. It's probably her best EE, and it's super, super nice. Next up, we have Aria, another ice unit that's really strong in the previous meta, especially against like a ton of fire units that are out there, right? If you protect the team comp with Aria, you're pretty solid. Aria is a fantastic anchor. She's used sometimes in Cleave and Aggro, in really weird teams. And yeah, so Lifesteal and Resist build is what I'm currently on. Fairytale for a Nightmare, I gave her my plus 27 one, my best copy, and she's currently starting the battle with a single focus. You notice that, hey, Azza, your stats aren't optimal. You know, your speed's only 170, which is kind of normal, right? But your crit chance isn't max, your crit damage is not even there. Like, what's going on? The reason I did this is because I want to maximize my effect resistance, so Aria couldn't get stripped by random units. She used to struggle a lot with like ROLs, S3ing her and stunning her, just random units that were able to get rid of her counter buff. With 200 resist, you're really, really safe. If you really want to put Bastion of Hope on her, the reason I went for Fairytale for a Nightmare is that extra fixed damage is really nice, especially because I'm currently running very low damage, right? Low crit damage here, which is why I went for the compromise. You see my Aria, guys, in action. She still kills stuff. It's just a little different approach to her build. Alright, next up, Fairytale Tenebria. Built her at the end of the season, kind of ungeared my Para, built up my Fairytale. She is currently on a speed and offset build, almost 290 speed. I feel like she's a very fun unit, so I just went for her. But yeah, otherwise pretty standard debuffing build. Her base speed is low, so it's unfortunate that she can't really speed contest, but Tagahel's Ancient Book on her just to help support the team. I don't really soulburn Tenebria herself, really. It is nice sometimes to turn cycle with her, but the book is best safe for other units. Next up, Elena. Yeah, mine's on a counter build. A lot of you guys say, oh, use Elena to counter like cleave units. Mine's a little too slow. She won't cut against those units, but I typically bring her into like standard v standard matchups. I love her stats here. They're very, very good. And on Celestine, on counter, she actually ends up healing quite a bit while cleansing the team. One of the few units that can cleanse on her S1, so very nice. And she has the EE where she dispels an extra debuff from the team when using her S3, which is great, especially if you get unbuffable and another debuff on you. So it's quite nice. Next up, Frida. This is a recently released unit, and obviously her banner is still up right now, hopefully I think at the time of posting. She is on a speed and resist build. People have been bashing me in the comments sometimes for not using her in a cleaver aggro team. Sorry guys, I just don't have the units for it. But Soul Constellation for her is pretty nice in a standard team. You can use her to get some extra effect resistance and gain combat readiness when your opponent opens up. I use her a lot in Arena, actually, and Guild Wars, but you can definitely use her in RTA. I've shown you guys how to use her in RTA with slower teams. She's pretty decent. You just have to kind of tailor your team around her and have some really strong units that can soul burn in the front line. Alright, next up we have Alencia. She's going to be getting her buff, but this is her current stat line right here. 221 speed on injury set is pretty good. I might keep her on this, honestly, but she is getting a extra, she is getting an extra 20% crit rate just base inside her passive, which is fantastic. Kind of like how Ravi has free stats, right? So I'm going to probably keep full Metal's Auto Mail because I think it's pretty good still with the crit damage and speed stacking up to 4 times. We still have her on the Recover HP EE. I think that's still really good if you're playing her Bruisery. So what I'll do is I'll just decrease her crit chance by 20%, like just, or 22%, I'm a little overcapped, by getting rid of some stuff like this, right? I don't need the 19% crit rate here. Might be able to find, something like this. Get rid of this boot, right? Find something a bit better here. This is already a really good boot, but the crit chance is not needed. Alright, so anyway, moving on, we got Arunka. Use her a lot in Guild Wars, but really not so much anywhere else. RTA, she's kind of a wash too. She's just kind of too easy to kill. She has no way to stay alive, especially against the high damage that we see in today's meta. So yeah, she's kind of in a rough place. 7k attack though is really nice. I have her on Little Queen's Huge Crown for extra damage, and especially against barrier units, she's quite good there. I have her on the EE where she increases combat readiness by 30% whenever she S3s, so that she can turn cycle, you know, come back again before your opponent's barriers wear off, and then S3 somebody else. Because she does reset her S3 when she kills somebody. Immortal Wukong, so here we go. Lifesteal and crit set, that's right. He's currently not capped on crit, but that's because his artifact here actually gives him an additional 18%, so right there, and he gets an extra 20% critical hit resistance, which is not too shabby. Yeah, overall, I think he's a pretty solid unit. Could be really good once Empyrean Ilynav kind of hits the scene, once the next season starts. His ability to deal extra damage, just scaling really well with a difference in attack stat, is really nice. He doesn't defense penetrate, right? He just deals a ton of damage in one hit. So he's pretty good. Alright, next up we have Laya. Laya, she can actually be on 27k health. I usually team imprint with her, but with this I'm usually about 30k health in battle, which is very nice. 270 speed, so she's currently on speed set and an offset piece. That's why you see some random crit chance and stuff laying around. Like, I don't want to modify out this crit chance here, it's too good. And I don't want to modify like random effectiveness out. I think I can't. Yeah, this one, I can't modify the effectiveness out. So not super optimal in her stat line, but it doesn't matter because Laya's Laya. And Laya has Sweet Miracle. So you have this to increase your health by a bunch, and at the start of the match, start of the turn, you have a 100% chance to decrease debuff durations by 1 turn, which is really good. If you're going up against units with Sweet Miracle, do keep in mind that you can keep track of the turns. Just keep track of the opponent's turns as much as possible. That way you know when you can and cannot control the Laya on subsequent turns after you proc the Sweet Miracle artifact. Next up, we have Rimuru. Okay, speed and immunity, but my Rimuru is a resist Rimuru, and he's been working quite well in RTA. I'm really quite surprised how well he's been working, honestly. I might increase his HP and decrease his defense by a little bit. I don't know at this point, but he's on Proof of Valor to decrease the damage that he takes by even more, and oh boy, does he work wonders against low damage teams or protect the tower type of teams, right? Midnight God Lilias, Sylvan Sage Vivian, he's great in countering those types of units there. Alright, next up, Zahak. Just showing you guys this. He's on a PvE build right now. You can still use him in PvP, it's just that Shalltear is kind of a better option in PvP. She is a bit more resilient there, in my opinion, because if Shalltear and Zahak are both getting outsped, Shalltear has a higher chance of surviving because she has that passive where she can't take more than half her health as damage. Zahak gets invincibility after he S3s, which isn't as good because, well, you have to outspeed, and you can't really outspeed like Rons and Zeos and Jackos and stuff, so probably dead. And that's probably what people are going to pick into you. If you're trying to pick for a high speed DPS, they're probably just going to pick Zeo, and then you can't do anything. His EE here is just increasing attack of the target and cast it for 2 turns when he uses S2. You can switch it over to a Bruiser Zahak build. I think that'd be pretty fun, and build him on his EE that gives injury. I think that'd be pretty cool to see. But yeah, I haven't tested out myself, but maybe in the future. Right, next up we have Albedo. So speed set, HP set. You guys know I love using my Albedo, and she's even on really, look at that, really terrible gear. But hey, she works, and that's all you need her to do is just work. She's currently pretty fast, 220 speed. I like her turn cycling, 29k health, pretty nice. 16.5 K defense. So sorry, 1.6k defense. That's 16.5k. Holy. And a bit of effectiveness. Now, the 70 effectiveness is good. When DDR uses S2, you get an effectiveness buff. You're up to 120 effectiveness, which is nice. You can debuff pretty much every unit in the game. Most people are running about 100 resistance on their units. 3F makes Albedo one of the best bruisers in the game, so that's why I have it on her. Next up, we have my man Charles, built for PvP, but never sees the light of day. Unfortunately, I still have to have him built up just out of respect for this unit. I love him so much. He's on counter set and pen set, and he has some of my best counter gears, honestly. Counter is not my forte. I don't really like the RNG aspect of things. I much prefer lifesteal sets, but yeah, Elbrus Ritual Sword on Charles is pretty good. And of course his EE here just increases his chance to S2 after he S1s by an additional 10%. Alright, next up we have Senya. Senya's on a pretty cool build, 4k attack, a bit low for a Senya, but she is pretty decent bulkier, 190 speed, pretty fast, and she's on 210 effect resistance. Oh yeah, guys. Running that effect resistance here really helps prevent her counter buff from getting stripped. The unfortunate thing is, she's just kind of vulnerable anyway. She's just not that great right now because there's so many units that guarantee crits. There's so many units that just don't care. They'll penetrate your defense. There's so many units that don't crit anyway and just do a ton of flat damage, right? I think of things like Blood Moon Haste and stuff like that. They don't care, right, about you whether or not you have anti-crit or not. So yeah, Senya struggles in that regard. Hopefully she gets a bit of love soon. All she really needs is a tweak to her passive. I think just higher anti-crit chance will make her a bit more consistent. Otherwise she's getting crit left and right by so many units, it kind of sucks. Alright, next up we have Silvertide Christy. Speaking of resistance, this is my resist support unit. So Christy here is basically just on a bunch of spare gear that has a bunch of resistance, and that's all you need her for. She has almost 300 effect resistance, still gets debuffed by Zeos, because that's fair. And we have her on Bastion of Perlucia, so she has ability to give immunity to herself and the backline unit, as well as a barrier. So she's really good at protecting that backline unit. She shares half of her effect resistance with the backline unit too, so she gives about 150 effect resist to whoever I'm protecting there, which is quite nice. But yeah, that's Christy. Use her a lot in Guild Wars, occasionally bring out an RTA, but very solid overall. Next up is Yolha, same boat as Krau, just kind of struggles with so much injury running around. You can't really use your revenge damage very well, but with 31k health, she does survive stuff like Midnight Gala Lilias, which is kind of cool. But again, with injury running around, you're never going to be able to use Yolha effectively in RTA unless you somehow ban DDR and Choux and injury sets in general. Alright, next up we have Blooming Litica. I have her built just for fun. I don't really use her honestly in RTA. I use her in Guild Wars sometimes just for fun, just to see what she can do, and she works sometimes. I just don't have the units to support her, and she's a very, very selfish unit. Pretty much nothing to support the team, and her abilities, yeah, they're just very team reliant as well. Seductive Flower to increase effectiveness, and for the extra attack you can decrease combat readiness of the targets, right? And she has an AoE extra attack, so she'll push everybody back, which is kind of cool. But my effectiveness is a little low. My HP is okay, but I think my speed is a little low too. I just don't have the gear for her, unfortunately. Next up we have Celine. Celine is very tanky here, so I have her on Destruction and Pen Set. 4k attack, 325-ish crit damage, and oh boy does she hit hard. She hits hard while having this HP too, which is incredible. Secret Art Storm Sword, got it at plus 30, so you get that combat readiness and the 100% chance to increase the attack to make it consistent. I have her on the EE where she attacks the a random target and she stuns them for a turn. Comes in handy quite a bit. You can use the one where she attacks the highest attack unit, but that's easily baited with stuff like Genuas nowadays, especially with so many units running high resist builds like resist Genuas, resist Galas and stuff. It's really easy to attack them and then not get anything done. So stun is the way to go. You can randomly stun units. Sometimes you get really lucky and you stop a unit from taking a crucial turn. So yeah, it just adds an extra layer of annoyingness to her kit. Next up, we have Midnight Gala Lilias, the unit I hate fighting against, but our build is pretty cool. We have Torrent and Speed set. She could be faster. I don't have the speed gear for her, but she does one-shot knights, and that's pretty much all I use her for. Occasionally. Very, very occasionally. 265 speed, running Dark Bloodkeeper, Jenua's artifact. This is a tech that I fought against. I had an opponent who used Dark Bloodkeeper against me, and oh my god, I could not kill this Midnight God Lilias in a 1v1 situation. I eventually died with my Sylvan Sage Vivian, but yeah, now I've kind of put this on her instead of Wind Rider, and it looks to be pretty cool. You get a barrier, right, and it can be only activated once every 3 turns, but that's about the time you get to turn cycle into your passive again. And she turn cycles quite quickly, because she gains combat readiness fairly often with her passive. So overall, not too shabby. I think I'll try her out a bit more in the preseason, hopefully, if my opponents are playing a bit slower. We'll have to see, because Empyrean Ilynav kind of shuts her down. Alright, next up we have Destina. I kind of clicked this equip all button here, and it literally, see it just an equipped gear onto her. So we're just going to accept this. That's her new build now. I use her in PvE right now, so she's used for Nightmare Labyrinth. That's why her gear isn't that great. It's just an equip all button gear. And yeah, if you want to build her, 200 resist is the way to go, 200 speed, and then all the bulk you can get. She's on Guardian Ice Crystals for right now, increasing effect resistance a bit more, and increasing the amount you can recover some health when your allies are attacked at 50% or lower health, which is good. Her EE here is increasing combat readiness of her S2 by an additional 20%. It already does 30, so if you do an extra 20%, then you get up to 50. It's great for turn cycling. Speaking of turn cycling, Ocean Breeze Luluka, really good at that. 240 speed, about, with the Guardian Ice Crystals here, she has about 260 almost effect resistance. It's pretty good. Good enough, at least. Speed set and resist set here. Now, Ocean Breeze Luluka is great for cleansing. She's good for defense buff. She has a bit of sustain with Ice Cream buff for the healing. And her S1 is good for turn cycling. Her problem is ML Politis exists. So if you get rid of ML Politis, she becomes pretty good, right? Even into things like ML Luna, she's pretty decent there too. Alright, moving on, we have Rowana. So queen of just shutting down dumb mechanics in PvE, and also great against things like Navy Captain Landy and stuff in PvP, Abyssal Euphine as well. Now, not the greatest in RTA, easy to counter sometimes if you pick her too early. If you pick her late, she likely is going to get banned. Still good to have her though on hand. Idol's Cheer is currently what I'm using for expeditions, but typically I switch her over to Stella Harpa if I bring her into Nightmare Labyrinth, right? And she's decent on Stella Harpa in PvP as well, but you can also switch her to a different artifact. She typically is going to be on Team Imprint here, but when I have her on self-imprint, she has even more bulk, but she doesn't usually have problems surviving. It's her teammates that do. Next up, Sharoon. Sharoon is great because I have her on 230 speed and she's on a counter set. All of my speed rolls went into counter gear. I know, it's terrible. I don't have any speed set pieces, really. Very, very few. But my counter gear likes to roll insane, just like that Nahkwol necklace you saw earlier. Flat HP, but 23 speed. Yeah, that's just what happens, apparently. Wondrous Potion Vial on her, because she does have cleansing in her kit. In fact, she doesn't have healing in her kit either, but she does have this EE that decreases her cooldown of her S3, which is her greatest asset. She can full buff strip your opponent, she can apply Venoms, she can do a bunch with, like, increasing your opponent's cooldowns and such to kind of keep them in check, kind of lock them down. Very good control unit, good with Venoms, good with applying injury as well. And again, the counter set on her makes her really consistent too. Alright, next up we have Conqueror Lilias. So I actually built her up because I pre-ban ML Politis and Nahkwol and ML Lunas and stuff all the time. I needed some way to have a faster unit to use in RTA occasionally, so I do have Conqueror Lilias right here. She is pretty decent at 290 something speed. Again, not as good as, you know, where I'm supposed to be for my rank, which is 300 plus speed. But she gets the job done. Nostalgic Music Box here, giving some extra defense, but also granting extra buffs for the team. If I want to, I can put her on Team Imprint here to give extra attack to my units, but typically the extra HP for herself is useful, especially if I'm using bruisers that aren't really attack scaling. Speaking of non-attack scaling bruisers, we got my General Purgus here. Unfortunately, after I built him on this, Zeotrap has kind of fallen to shambles because there's so many good answers to Zeotraps now, and Emma Rowana is one of them. She is so strong into the Zeotrap shenanigans, so is Emma Luna. There's just too many things to keep track of and ban. It's kind of impossible at this point. But speed set, immunity set, he's looking pretty good. Strat Gauntlet as well, because you can see he has effect resistance. So here, he actually gets up to 160 resistance. If I put him in the back line with Christy, he'll be up to 300 resistance. So 300 resist General Purgus, that's on a bruisery build, right? Lower crit damage, but I had to do that to get the effect res. And yeah, if your opponents are hitting him, he's pushing up your team and combat readiness, you're going to be turn cycling around that opponent like it's nothing. Alright, speaking of turn cycling, Lionheart Cermia, she's getting a buff. It's great. But Lionheart Cermia right now is on Lifesteal and Crit. I have her on the same build that I've had her on before. She is going to be not using Fighting Spirit anymore. She's going to have cooldowns, and that's great. That's fine by me. I think it's probably a good change, honestly, because it allows her to fight ML Politis, right? Which is really nice. Durandal here as well, so I like to have her increase her combat readiness. She cuts insanely fast with her passive in Durandal. If she's hit and, like, let's say dual attacked or something into her, oh man, the Durandal kicks in. If you're below the 75% health, you get 16 times 2, you get 32% combat readiness, plus her passive pushes up. You're going to be zooming from the back of the combat readiness board all the way to the front, right? Lionheart is fantastic. Alright, next up we have Little Queen Charlotte. So, Little Queen Charlotte here is on a slower build, 140 speed, very slow actually, but she hits like an absolute truck. She has lower crit rate, but that's because she's currently running Hellcutter. I have her on speed set and immunity set. I know, speed set, but you're only 140 speed, Azza. It doesn't really matter. I'd prefer 140 to 0 speed, honestly. If she was at 0 speed, she'd never take a turn, at least here. Usually with the help of some combat readiness boosting units like Mediator Calric, right? You can use Frida, for example, with her. It's not terrible. Then you can get some mileage out of her against like Blood Moon Haste, for example. Alright, next up we have Ambitious Tywin. This is my build. I can probably honestly drop quite a bit of defense, maybe like 250 defense, and just slap a bunch of effectiveness on him. But currently I just have him 230 speed, a bunch of HP, as bulky as possible. If you want to see his full bulk at self-imprint is 27k health, and he's running Aureus as well. So with an Aureus Tywin, I could honestly just boost his health up to like 30k health. I can at least try, like drop his defense, boost him up to 30k health. That might help him a little bit. I can also drop the defense a little bit and just increase the effectiveness. For the speed, the effectiveness might be pretty good, but you guys have seen my Tywin work. He still puts in the work, right? He still gets the job done, even with no effectiveness. He's fine. He ignores res when he gets the rage buff. Next up we have Bellion. So Bellion's on a counter and immunity build. She is also currently on 3F. It's not a max 3F, but it's 3F nonetheless. Once I max it out, it'll be much better for her. But base speed, I'm running her with 200 effect resistance, just making her super hard to deal with. And if the opponents are attacking her, they can't control her, they can't debuff her, and hopefully 3F will keep proccing as she counters, and you'll just kill everybody. But been really rare for me to be able to draft her. Hopefully I get to draft her more next season though. It'll be quite fun. Crimson Armin. So yeah, she's on protection set with HP, almost 30k health here, with 2k defense, base speed, and 100 something effect resistance. Typically use her with Laya. Laya can turn cycle her quite a bit and push her up, and then when Crimson Armin takes a turn, your speed tuning should be at the point where you can put the invincibility on right after Laya takes her turn. So Laya's at the back of the combat readiness bar, Crimson Armin puts the immunity up and the invincibility, and then your team is good to go. She's on Aureus because her passive already mitigates damage. This will damage share. You can stack both of those, making Crimson Armin one of the best mitigators in the entire game. Speaking of mitigators, Dragonbride Senya is still really strong with that defense penetration in her S3. I didn't really use her all that much last season. I did at the beginning, and then I kind of tapered off in preference for Tywin and Albedo over her, because I felt like every time I used Dragonbride Senya, everyone just burst her down really early, and then I just had no knight. With Tywin and Albedo, it's a little bit harder, right? Because Tywin, you don't really want to hit him too much with debuff skills, and Albedo, everyone focuses her down, but that's a little bit different because she'll counter the opponent, so she's a pretty big threat in and of herself, right? Dragonbride Senya, not too bad though. She's my adamant shield holder. I like to use her sometimes with stuff like a Tywin. Works pretty well together if you have an Aureus user with an adamant shield user. But yeah, not too bad. Next up, Empyrean Ilynav. So this is a destruction and immunity build. I have her on quite a bit of bulk, right? 28k health, 1600 defense, and her crit damage is a little lacking. I do agree with that, but she does enough damage that she can fully apply the injury on her S3 and her S1. So yeah, she's pretty much just an injury machine right here, and she's on Holy Sacrifice, so when the opponent kills her eventually, she will come back and still prevent defense penetration onto your team, because they're going to be focusing her down as soon as possible, especially if they've drafted defense penetration units already. Next up, we have Last Rider Krau. So, yeah, gets one shot by Gala, that's why I don't use him. But he's on a lifesteal immunity build. I love this build so much. He's one of my favorite knights to use because he can self-sustain with his S3. And it's quite shocking to some people when they can't kill him because he keeps healing himself with his S3. He's really nice with Aureus, again, just soaking up damage for the team. You can use him on other artifacts as well to mitigate if you have another Aureus knight. But yeah, typically, very, very good. Aureus on him is nice, even though his HP isn't around 30k. 27k is great because he can heal with lifesteal, which makes this Aureus even more effective. He's going to last on the field for much longer. Next up, Navy Captain Landy. I'm not a huge Landy user. I've used her a few times in the past week or so, just because she fit the bill for the draft. But yeah, counter crit. She's quite bulky here. I honestly wish her HP was a bit higher, a bit lower defense, but yeah, I just can't manage the stats. I don't have really great crit set gear and not really great counter set gear either. She's on Elber's Ritual Sword, which helps her with more counter attacks. You guys know the drill. Just add RNG on top of RNG and hopefully maybe you win. Alright, Arwell's here with a speed set and a defense set, which is very surprising. Defense set's really not seen all that often, but we made it work. Almost 1700 defense, almost 30k health. Right? It would be 30k health if I self-imprinted her here, but we're currently on team imprint. Usually helps out quite a bit with maximizing the HP pool I have on my side of the field. 150 effect resistance with 50 effectiveness. Bastion of Perlucia as well. So Christy has one, Arwell has one. It's really nice. This actually helps the backline user a bit more because it's enhanced mode, we get a bigger barrier. But yeah, getting that immunity, getting that barrier on the backline unit is huge for preventing openers from stifling that backline unit too much too early on. It's also really good for using it on cleansers like DJB. Having a Bastion user, right, give that immunity to a high res cleanser is just it's like an extra layer of protection for you, right? Okay, next up we have Spez. Specimen Sez on Destruction. He is my favorite bruisery evasion unit. I had him on a 200 speed build, but he was a bit squishy, 1000 defense, 10k HP. I slowed him down a little bit just to give him a lot more bulk, and boy oh boy does he do work. Moonlight Dreamblade is fantastic on him right now. Getting that attack buff is huge. Extra evasion is very nice for protecting him, and with that attack buff, he can S3 and pretty much kill even when the opponent is not stunned. Alright, next up we have Eye Celine. This is my pride and joy on the account. So she has penetration and lifesteal. 25 speed on that helmet there. Yeah, I'm spoiling my Celine. It's quite crazy. So yeah, and she's on pen set too. Imagine the stats I can get if I was on crit set, for example, right? And then I can allocate like less into crit chance and more rolls into speed, because that's my main problem, is getting her at 100% crit chance. Currently on Dust Devil, you guys saw me use her in RTA video last week. Super strong, guys. Dust Devil on her is great. I have used her on Secret Art Storm Sword. I've used her on Wind Rider, right? Several different artifacts, but Dust Devil seems to be the best one for me. Just the RNG proc, if you can hit that second hit, man, that unit's dead. Usually that unit's absolutely dead. Alright, next up, Flitica, my absolute #1 favorite unit in the entire game, carrying 290 speed. I wish she could be 300 speed, but I basically gave her my best speed gear because I love her so much. So yeah, 170 effectiveness, pretty good. I could probably drop that effectiveness a little bit, but hey, the gear's working out, so why not? Guiding Light on her is really nice as well, so that she stays stealth. Typically she's pretty good against like Zeo openers, but she's really weak against pretty much everything else, right? Weak against Emma Politis, Emma Luna, Ron, Peyra, all those shenanigans. Really hurt her, and her base speed is not that great too, so she struggles in the speed races. Speaking of speed racing, Watcher Shuri here is a speed imprint unit. Dropped his speed because I had to take his some pieces from him, but currently right now, I think it was his chest piece, but currently right now he's still okay. Good damage overall. I use him in Guild Wars sometimes as a unit because he can bridge with Sashay, so when your opener kills something, he can push himself up, or he pushes up the entire team. The next unit will kill something, push up the Watcher Shuri, and the Watcher Shuri can go in and one-shot the last unit. He does grant skill nullifier with his S3, so I have him on that, just to make sure that he stays alive. Like, sometimes you can use him as a bait for dark units. Dark units will hit him because he's light, and yeah, not too bad overall with Watcher Shuri. I don't bring him in RTA because that's not the type of playstyle I use in RTA, but still useful in Guild Wars, right? Next up, Architect Laika. So has probably one of my best speed damage sets right here. She has enough damage to one-shot pretty much any unit in the game as long as they have a target debuff. But yeah, overall 270 speed is pretty good. It's really nice. The problem with it is that I play so slow that most people can outspeed me anyway. So Tagahel's Ancient Book for her is really great for soul burning. 270 speed's nice, but again, most of these people are opening with fast 300 speed units, so it kind of locks her out from doing her job. She also struggles a little bit because she has to do that soul burn S2, and because Celine is around, and the non-attack skill will probably get your Architect like killed more than anything. Next up, Benevolent Roman. He's on a pretty nice tanky build. 270 speed is good enough to cut any Emma Politis that's going to be going first if she non-attack skills. But I find that even Roman's just so inconsistent, it kind of sucks. It's kind of rough. If they made him more consistent, he would be a pretty nice counter to things like Emma Politis. But he has a 2-turn silence, which is nice. If you get lucky, you can control Lias and stuff too. Tagahel's Ancient Book for the extra soul burn for the extra turn. When he goes first, he S3s, then goes for an S2, and his EE allows him to counter the Emma Politis by giving him that extra 15% combat readiness whenever an opponent uses a whenever the combat readiness of an ally is decreased, right? So it's not bad, it's pretty good. Next up, we have New Moon Luna. She's on an immunity and speed build. You kind of have to have her on immunity, otherwise her effect skill nullifier is not really going to kick in or do anything for you. But yeah, the speed set here, she's on almost 290 speed. I know a lot of people make her even faster. I find that I don't really need her too fast, so this is good enough for me. Tagahel's Ancient Book for her to soul burn herself, so that it works out quite nicely. A very self-sufficient, independent unit, right? Super strong. I use her all the time in Arena and in Guild Wars. I use her less in RTA, but that's because I pre-ban her, so my opponents can't use her. Next up, we have Sage Ball and Cezanne. He is on a speed and resist build. Currently on Bastion of Hope. I might put that artifact on somebody else. I feel like Ball has kind of fallen a little bit as an anti-cleave unit. There's so many different options out there that can be anchors and that can screw him over, right? Fire Politis, Abyssal Euphine, all that stuff stops him from cutting. You have a lot of things that punish him as well, that can easily one-shot him too. So many cleave units can one-shot him, it's crazy. Feels bad. But yeah, moving on, we got Silverblade Araminta, kind of a fun little unit I was trying to test out, and this is her current build, speed and immunity set. She is, she's mostly here to be fun. You would kind of cut after like a Broman would go, and then you would come and just stun everybody that goes afterwards. So it's kind of meant to just be a little trap that I can implement in RTA. It's never really worked out, unfortunately, but hey, here she is with 180 effectiveness, just waiting. She's on Abyssal Crown, by the way, for extra chances to stun, just in case her S3 gets 15% in, but who knows. Anyway, Solitaria of the Snow, I have her on 260 speed and 200 effectiveness. Honestly, I'd kind of want her a bit bulkier, and I'd also want her with more effectiveness. Maybe I can drop the speed down to 250 speed, but she's on Fairytale for a Nightmare for extra chip damage. I think it's quite nice. You can run on other artifacts for extra debuffs, you can run on Book for extra turns. It's all up to you and what your team needs. We have Sylvan Sage Vivian, so Solitaria counter Sylvan Sage Vivian. She stops focus, right, from being gained. The Sylvan Sage Vivian here is on a lifesteal build. You guys have seen how strong my Sylvan Sage has hit my opponents before, so lifesteal and crit are both very, very useful here. I have her on Chatty, kind of like Roy. If you didn't play with the original side story released, unfortunately you can only get one Chatty from playing through your side story records. So if you have Roy and Sylvan Sage, you're gonna have to switch the artifact between the two, unfortunately. You can also run Sylvan Sage on a damage artifact. I've seen people do that before if you're playing a destruction build Sylvan Sage, so maybe that's the route that you can go if you want. But I have her on a lifesteal build. You guys know me, I like lifesteal, so it's just the way I go whenever possible. Next up, we have DJB, so he's on speed and resist. He's actually good enough, apparently, that he made it into the Hero Compodium Discord server. Someone submitted the build, and he's there now. So 260-something speed and 240 resist. He also gets an extra 30 from Soul Constellation, so that's going to be 270, right? He's going to cut the opponents pretty easily at 260-something speed with a 12% combat readiness gain. Obviously, I like this to be a little bit better, right? I think you can go up to 16%. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be wasting bottles of knowledge on something like this. He's good enough. He's good enough. Dragon King Sharoon, used her quite a bit in the last season. Even Idia, my friend Idia, he's been using Dragon King Sharoon quite a bit as well, and he had a whole change of heart. I've been trying to convince him, like, hey, look, she's kind of busted. And people didn't believe me. He did, though. He gave her a shot, and boy, oh boy, does he love her now. Sacred Tree Branch is so strong on her. Extra effectiveness, right? Extra combat readiness for the unit with the highest attack. So with the extra effectiveness here, the 22.5, she actually goes up to about 180 effectiveness, which is a really good threshold for her, especially because mine's on counter and she's on 225 speed. You can build her on speed set, you can make her even tankier, but I kind of like the counter. It's pretty nice for the Sacred Tree Branch combo. Moon Bunny, so she's on speed and immunity. I actually decreased her effect resistance by quite a bit. Look how tanky she is. I prefer her tanky because whenever I use her, people try to burst her down as soon as possible. A lot of people now are building 300 speed Bunny Dons. Maybe I can try that out. I don't know if I have the stats for it though. Doctor's Bag is still really good on her, dispelling extra debuffs with her S3 and with some extra healing to boot. Next up, Dark Units, APOC Ravi. So yeah, I had to kind of re-gear her a little bit. Unfortunately, not as strong as she used to be with her gear. But yeah, I kind of had to take some pieces to feed to other units. I don't really use APOC Ravi all that much, unfortunately. As you can see, the necklace is the one that took the biggest hit. But when she does work, she works. I feel like she might have a chance to come back with, if Empyrean Ilynav and stuff makes defense penetration more difficult. She is a good injury unit overall, right? You can maybe use Empyrean Ilynav with APOC Ravi together. I think they'll be quite a menace. Alright, next up, Assassin Cartuja. So speed and hit set. Use him as an anti-cleave unit sometimes. Gives you extra evasion for your team. Quite a RNG-based unit. But I have him on 100 effectiveness, just so you can potentially stun and defense break the opponents and provoke them from time to time. Snow Crystal for the extra critical hit resistance, right, potentially. So he has evasion, but if they were to hit him, they could potentially not crit. And any evasion or non-crit because of crit resist, he gains combat readiness. So with 240 speed, he can potentially cut the opponent as well, especially because he already has an innate CR push here where he gains 15 combat readiness if he successfully evades. Alright, moving on, we have Bad Cat Armin. So this is a unit I've been kind of wanting to try out. She seems fun. 230 something speed, 140 effectiveness. So she's on speed set and immunity set. Got quite a bit of bulk as well, 1700 defense and 20k HP. I have her on Champion's Trophy because her S1 is actually AoE. It'll increase her effectiveness to, 165, which is great. And then you have a chance to stun the opponent too. Keep in mind, this is an AoE hit, her basic attack. It's great. And then with this EE, I have her on getting buff durations decreased by 1 turn, so you can attack units with immunity, for example, and this effect is applied before inflicting provoke. So whenever she is hit by a provoke, she will she'll grant additional abilities here. So we're passive here. You increase, whenever she's attacked, she increases the critical hit damage of the foremost ally. There's a 50% chance of doing so, but even without it, it's still good, because if you're hit by a provoke or redirected provoke, the effect chance is doubled. So 100% chance to do that, and 100% chance for your front row ally to counterattack, which is really good. Alright, but anyway, she's kind of a gimmick unit, a meme unit. I just want to use her for fun. That's why I have her built. Next up is Dark Corvus. We have him almost 32k health. He's on my spare Durandal right here. But speed and HP set, 1500 defense is pretty good. I like him with more effect resistance. So 141 is nice, but not where I really want him fully. Could probably put a Strat Gauntlet on him if I really wanted. 200 effect res is insane, but Durandal for the turn cycling is what makes him so deadly. Great into low damage teams, not so great in the current meta because of injury. And defense penetration, that hurts a lot too. Designer Lilibet, so speed set, crit set. She is on Proof of Valor, very tanky, 18,000 health, almost 2,000 defense. 215 speed allows her to cut with her passive. She usually gets pushed back by Zeo though, it kind of sucks. But Proof of Valor allows her to stay in the game for much longer. You could run her on things like Golden Rose too, by the way, which is quite nice to help sustain her, keep her healed throughout the fight. But Proof of Valor is really great because people like to burst her down early so that they can use her debuffers, and I don't let them. Next up, Infernal Kawazu, a unit that I've talked about a little bit when I talked about the artifact tier list, but yeah, he works quite well on certain warrior artifacts. Speed set, immunity set, almost 4.5k attack. I'd like to get him to 5k attack, but I feel like he'd be a little too squishy if I did so. Currently, he's on Spear Purification, which gives him that extra attack boost and gains combat readiness whenever they use a non-attack skill, so quite nice for kind of potentially cutting your opponent, right? If they do it like a Payra S2 and then they do like a non-attack skill like an S3 afterwards, it's nice. If Ron S2s, you push up combat readiness, and then Ron S3s, you can push up even more with his innate cleansing and push. I have him on granting immunity to himself whenever he uses his S2. That way he can't be controlled after he procs and gets his vigor buff, so that it's really difficult to control him, and then he can probably just one-shot a unit on your opponent's side. Next up, Lone Crescent Bellona on Destruction and Penetration. Still ever on the same build. Looks like she has a little less attack. That's mostly because I switched her over to the plus 15 Sigurd, and Ravi, because I was using her so much more last season, got the plus 30 Sigurd. But if I put the plus 30 Sigurd on her, she would actually have like 3,700 attack instead. Next up, another good Navy Captain Landy counter along with Lone Crescent Bellona is Martial Artist Ken. So we have him on Resist and Destruction. His stats are okay. I feel like he could be a bit tankier, but getting that resist on him is really important. Getting that damage on him is still nice. He's on Sigurd's Scythe, pretty good. I could probably drop his attack a little bit, like to 4k, and then increase his defense a bit more, or maybe his effect resistance. Typically you want to pair him up with a unit like Christy, gonna be very nice for those situations where your opponent has a lot of debuffers or trying to control your ML Ken. His main problem is he just gets one shot by a lot of things. He can probably get one shot by like a Blood Moon Haste with his buff on, so kind of sucks. But if you have him on a team with defense penetration resistance, like with ML Ilynav, he'll be really nice. Next up, Mediator Cowric. So I have him on a damage build. I like him a lot on this damage build, honestly. Pen set, destruction set. Boy, does he pack a punch, actually. He hits quite well. He has HP scaling bruiser. He has good multipliers, too. Warhorn on him is the best artifact just for turn cycling, just like you had before on a support build. But this build's quite nice. If you're on a support build, you basically have him on a much higher HP and defense, and you don't have any of this damage here. You don't need effectiveness or resistance, you just have him on a full bulk and speed. Next up, we have Straze. So, pretty good. 3,800 attack, 265 crit damage. Enough to kill any knight, honestly, as long as you have your attack buff from Benimaru's Tachi. So he's on crit set just to help me with the stat line to push up a speed to 260. And we have Benimaru's Tachi. A lot of people are running Torrent set on him too, which is great. I have him on a bit of bulk. The bulk comes in handy sometimes. It makes it so he takes like about 2 hits to die instead of 1. So he actually gets to live sometimes and take an extra turn, which is quite nice. Next up, Abyssal Euphine. So I did switch her build up a little bit. She used to have 16k health, but now we're up to 18k. Perhaps we're going to go 20k next time by reducing the attack a little bit more down to maybe 1600 attack. I don't know. I don't want her attack too low because then when she goes into a traumatized state, she won't be able to kill anybody. But it's really rare that she goes into trauma state because she'll probably be killed beforehand. But yeah, that's why we have Elber's Ritual Sword on her, to potentially maximize our counters and to maximize our healing. Next up, Arbiter Vildred. We have him on counter, we have him on immunity. Oh boy, this unit's so funny. I love him. With his EE now, he is absolutely amazing. So he's quite a tanky boy, lacking a bit of damage here, but because he's slow and tanky, I'm relying on counter attacks, I'm relying on his evasion. Moonlight Dreamblade for the extra increased attack buff, it's going to be good. And his Archdemon's Eye right here, when he gets a Dark Contract buff, right? When he gains Archdemon's Might, it increases attack by 30%, evasion by 50%. It's great. It's huge. You have 70% evasion when you revive with Moonlight Dreamblade, and if you get the attack buff here, and you get the 30% attack increase here, even with these lower damage than like a DPS, normal DPS RB, you're still hitting like a truck. Speaking of hitting like a truck, BBK, now, she did get an EE, I'll talk about that later. We're on triple effect resist build here, so she's 177 effect resist, which is not bad. She actually goes up to 207 with this Hostess of the Banquet artifact, so 30% effect res, and she gets an increased damage here, which is nice. But her EE, it gives 12% crit chance. The unfortunate thing about that is, I'm overcapped on crit rate. I was already at 100%, but this is good. This means I can add even more crit damage to her. I can give a bit more damage overall, squeeze it out, and then she'll be a pretty lethal unit. But the EE that you want is the one that gives you another immortality when you reach lethal damage. So she starts with immortality. You can get her down to immortality. She'll live for a very long time. If you have Abigail, she gets a third immortality, right? It's insane. BBK is now a menace in RTA, just with that one small change. Right, next up, Closer Charles. He needs a buff. He needs something. He was supposed to be a candidate for the Awakened Potential update, actually, about a year ago before it was cancelled. But Lifesteal Immunity set on him. Pretty nice. I have him on Shepherd of the Hollow, and that increases his damage output when he's low. It increases evasion by 20% too. It's not too shabby overall. Kind of like it. But yeah, on a bruisery build, it doesn't work all that well. You're probably going to get one shot by too many things out there. Evasion is not the most reliable thing anymore. Remnant Violet, speaking of evasion, we have him on a bit of bulk here. Probably could build him like a bruiser, maybe tankier, but Lifesteal and Pen Set, it's just hard to get the stats on him. He really needs as much help as he can get. They did increase his multiplier, so maybe I can decrease his damage by a little bit, but Shepherd of the Hollow helps out with increased evasion. When he's low, he increases his damage even more, which helps his Lifesteal, so if he's low on health, increases his damage, Lifesteals more, heals up back to near full. So that's the combo with him. The problem is that he just gets crit sometimes and then he just dies. So, unfortunate. Next up, Briarwitch Iseria. Love my Briarwitch. Good damage that she packs here. 250 speed's pretty good. A middling speed range. 85 effectiveness, enough to debuff 100 resist units. And yeah, speed set, immunity set, she's pretty good with Guiding Light. I have her on my best Guiding Light actually, because I want her to stealth more than anybody else. I want her protected. Her ability to prevent opponents from reviving is huge, and Briarwitch here has extra 10% defense break increase chance, bringing her defense break to 75%, or sorry, from 75 to 85%, which is very nice. Makes her so much more consistent. Next up, Pirate Captain Flan. She's going to get a little rework coming up, but this is my build. I don't think I'm changing my build. I like my high effectiveness build with a lot of bulk on 250 speed. So yeah, I think this is still a pretty decent build on her overall. I might need to put a bit more effectiveness on her because she's losing the 50% innate, but she does give herself an effectiveness buff. But keep in mind, buffs can be stripped sometimes, and it's a little bit iffy there. She's on Star of the Deep Sea. That's Summertime Iseria's artifact. Best artifact for her, hands down. You can put bombs on your opponent and then detonate them in the same hit, so that's why it's super good. Next up, we have Sea Phantom Politis. She's really good as an opener, good floodgate unit against focus and fighting spirit units. She's on speed set and an offset piece. So fastest unit I have, 296 speed, and 100 effectiveness, good enough in most cases, but the bulk is kind of nice too to keep her alive. Unseen Observer helps give her combat readiness for turn cycling, but mostly for the 10 souls, so you can soul burn whoever you're going afterwards. Typically it's going to be soul burning stuff like a Tywin, or soul burning something like Jenua, so they can, Jenua gets the greater attack buff, a Tywin can get decreased cooldowns on his kit. If you don't need the attack buff, HP imprint is the way to go, so mine will be up to almost 17k health there, which is not bad, but I keep the attack imprint because I usually use it with Jenua in Arena. Next up, fun unit, Ain's Sama here, pretty good, 2k defense almost, 19,000 HP, 200 speed, good chunk of effectiveness, good chunk of effect resistance, and yeah, currently he's on some effect res and speed. He's fun, but he's not practical. The Staff of Ain's is a great artifact, increases effectiveness by 20% and effect res by 40. The effect res will decrease down to 20 with every hit suffered, but this means he starts the match with 200 effect res and about 108 effectiveness, which is really good. Okay, next up, Requiem Moana. I am not a fast player, and I just kind of slapped random gear on her just so she has this effectiveness. I mainly went for 260 effectiveness, like more than 250 is all I really wanted. That's why she has double immunity set. Don't put double immunity set on your units, guys, but look at that, 40% immunity. This, honestly, I didn't have a hit set thing, that was HP percent main stat, so that's why it's immunity here. This had 27% effectiveness. It just had the right stats, right? 41%. That's why I kept it on her. Hit set here, getting some more effectiveness, getting some more bulk and attack. That's really all she needs. She doesn't need any speed. She takes turns by your frontline unit going. So I have a mix of like HP and bulk on her, right? Effectiveness, HP here, and attack here. So she does a little bit of damage. She actually does quite a bit if you build her with a ton of attack, but I feel like she does enough here that it's alright. She's a good support unit. Taghael's Ancient Book for supporting your team. She doesn't really need the book, honestly, but when you soul burn your other units, it helps her out quite a bit. Alright, next up, we have Spectre Tenebria. Oh yeah, she has her, she actually has her EE, so I can go ahead and grab that. Hopefully we get something good, guys. Right, hopefully we get something good. So let's go ahead and grab Spectre's EE. I have enough to buy one, and it's a maxed EE! Hey, look at that! Wow. Okay, we'll take it. So, going back here, going back to our Spectre Tenebria, sorry for that little detour, guys, but I want to show you her with the EE, with the fully equipped stats. There you go. 4,100 attack. That is crazy. So mine's a lifesteal build. This actually makes it so that Nightmare Illusions increase her passive for attack and decrease condition changes to after attacking. She can stack her passive so fast now. It's great. You don't have to kill things, right? 5 times in a row, I believe you can stack it. You get attack, you get defense. Mine is going to be super bulky and super difficult to kill. Hopefully, this allows her to come back into the meta at some point. I know there's still a lot of AoEs. She's still weak to things like Abyssal Yufine, still weak to things like Navy Captain Landy, but at the very least, hopefully this will make her a bit tankier so she can survive. Lifesteal is pretty good for me. I didn't show you the stats yet. These are all like free lifesteal pieces. This is a free immunity piece, right? This is a random piece that I got here, free ring, and a random piece that I got here. So really only 2 pieces here are not free pieces, so she's pretty easy to build if you get the right rolls. Taghael's Ancient Book is great on her. You can also run Chatty if you really want. Good artifact for her here. And yeah, her EE, you guys just saw me get it. Extra attack, good stuff. Next up, we have, last unit is Zeo. So Zeo, 260 speed, bit of bulk, bit of damage. You guys know the drill. He has about 100 effectiveness here, and honestly, I can probably improve his build. I just don't really use Zeo all that much. Taghael's Ancient Book is great for soul burning. Mostly your other units. Zeo's just the opener. You push back the opponent's opener, something like that. Push back their biggest threat, or push back their cleanser, and then just use book on your other units, soul burn, kill everything. You're good. You can also run Bloody Rose on him. Bloody Rose is a pretty good artifact on him here, but with effectiveness, I probably want to bump up his effectiveness a bit more. Then you have Bloody Rose, then you're good to go, right? Bloody Rose goes up to like 60% effectiveness or something, right? Look at that, 60% effectiveness on single target attack, and afterwards you can inflict Vampiric Touch. So if you do that, if you're hitting that unit that you just hit with Zeo and you inflict that debuff, your units are going to be healing up quite a bit every time you attack them. So it's pretty nice. Alright, so after the Zeo, I actually realized we had one more unit. We were sorting my mages earlier, but we have DDR. That's right, the king of the last season. I've used him in almost every single match I played, and boy oh boy, I love my DDR. So not only am I just obsessed with Plague Doctors in general, but he does wonders in game. Speed set and hit set here makes him really good. He has a pretty high effectiveness overall. If I put him on a self-imprint here, he'll have 150 effectiveness. With his own buff, he reaches 200 effectiveness, which is very nice. But I usually have him on team imprint. 13 effectiveness usually doesn't matter too much when you're reaching like the 180, 190 effectiveness range anyway. He's on Potion Vial to help cleanse debuffs from your team, especially when he takes an extra turn with his S3. You can cleanse 2 debuffs in 1 turn, which is kind of nice. But yeah, DDR, you guys know how good he is. He's very annoying to fight against, very good to use. But that is pretty much it. So thank you all so much for watching this video, guys. Hopefully this video has helped you out in planning or building your own units, especially ones that you might have gotten from selectors. Maybe you got a good glimpse of what I use the artifacts for, what EEs I'm putting on my units, and why. So if this video has helped you out in any way, please leave a like and subscribe for more Epic 7 content. And until next time, take care.